How's it going out there? This is Feature Mind. Today's video is called Are We Living in the Mind of God? The Origin of Consciousness Finally Revealed. And so to begin this discussion, we must be honest about what we think life is. Because before Earth, scientists would like to say that there was a singularity of everything packed into one condensed form of energy. And so they won't provide you with any logical reasoning as to how the singularity came to be. And they actually teach us in schools that the singularity magically expanded and turned into human life and everything that we experience here on Earth. And they tell you that the singularity created the entire solar system and the entire universe as well. And they're saying that all of this happened by accident without any type of intelligent design involved. For the scientific theory, you have to have a lot of convenient events happen in order for Earth to become an actual thing. With the creation story, it actually makes more logical sense because it says in the beginning, there was and is a creator of all things. And so the biggest problem with the scientific theory is where did that singularity come from? Because the singularity would have to be an actual thing. There would have to be some type of unknown particle. I believe they're calling it the God particle now. It would have to be something. It would have to be a thing. And so allegedly that's what's going on with the CERN experiments. They're trying to find this original particle that kicked off everything that we are able to interact with in this universe. The biggest thing that the scientists are overlooking is that this God particle would still require an origin. If you were to find this God particle, then who made that God particle? And this is the question that the scientific community will continue to avoid when you try to bring it up, because they know they have no answer for this question. And then if you keep pressing them on it, they'll finally admit that they don't know how there could be a particle that existed before anything else. The reason why the scientists will refuse to answer this question is because they are in denial that there is only one real logical answer to that question. And the answer to that question completely removes atheism as a logical option of reality, as we will discuss in this video. No atheist has ever even attempted to answer that question, and scientists continue to dodge the answer to that question as well. Scientists refuse to even attempt to hypothesize an answer to the question. The reason why they won't theorize about the answer to this question is because it can only lead to one logical conclusion, as I will explain in this video. And so every time I've ever encountered a scientist or an agnostic or atheist, if the conversation goes deep enough, they might try to stomp you with, then who made God? Or they might ask something like, how could God always exist without having a beginning? And so they ask this counter question, assuming that a creationist is in the same situation as they are, where we would be stumped with such a question. Well, I will show you in this video that there actually is a very logical response to this question. Now, this explanation I came up with many, many years ago. This was not anything I researched through any type of religious filter. I did not arrive at these findings through any type of religious perception at all or anything like that. I simply went into deep thought, asked questions, and sought out the most logical answers to this question as possible. And so what you're about to hear in this video, I do not want to be judged on how I arrived at these conclusions. I'm sharing with you the conclusions I came up with while asking questions like, how could God always exist and be infinite with no beginning or an end? Because when the atheist asks who created God, the basic answer would be nobody created God. But for a more in-depth answer, it would go more like this. There had to be a moment when nothingness existed for the scientific theory to work. Because if you're saying that there's a moment in the history of the universe where there was a particle, then you are saying that there was something that existed before time. And then if you believe that this God particle existed beyond time, then you must admit that this God particle would have to be something which you could possibly consider God. Because how could anything exist beyond time? Because that thing would have to be something. Because to be a true scientist, you would have to believe in a time when there was only absolute nothingness. Scientists are not being honest if they don't start at an absolute void of anything. And that means no singularity, no Higgs boson, and no God particle. It also means no dark matter or anything like that. And so for there to be absolute nothingness, you don't have any air, you don't have any light, you don't have any time or space. You literally would have absolutely nothing at all. Some will say in the beginning there was dark, But when I dug deep into my research, I came to a point where for there to be nothingness, there would have to be a place without even any dark, because dark is actually a thing. Because how could dark exist without a consciousness that is aware that darkness is even an option of reality? And so for there to be absolutely nothing at all in existence would require there to be a moment where there would not be any dark or light. And the closest word we have to describe something like that would be invisible. So you would have to have invisibleness in order for there to be nothing. And that means, unfortunately for you scientists out there, that there would be no particles for the Big Bang to even occur. And so this is the moment that we must identify if we are truly looking for the answers about how is it possible that God could have always existed outside of time. Because this moment without darkness that we would call invisible would have to be a moment where the conflict of reality would occur. No thing can exist on its own because it will require something to acknowledge that no thing is even an option, which would be an infinite paradox moment of disembodied, self-aware consciousness. I would imagine this moment would be like sitting in nothingness, but being aware that you exist. The closest example to that would be to sit in a dark room or close your eyes and just be aware that you exist. And so that would probably be a time before there would even be any words to describe what you are. So at that moment, there would probably only be a feeling that you exist, because before words are feelings. And that would only lead to the consciousness declaring that I am. This moment of absolute nothingness is what I've concluded could possibly be the infinite and eternal origin of self-aware consciousness, or what many people would call God. You see, this is a much deeper question than if a tree falls in the middle of nowhere, did it actually fall? You see, this question actually is the question we should ponder, because if you consider if there is an option of nothingness to exist at all, that means that the answer would have to be no and yes. And so after this moment of self-aware consciousness, the only thing that would be in existence would be that self-aware consciousness. And so for there to be anything after that, the Bible even confirms that everything was created through words, because before there were words, there was thoughts that would form ideas. And so the Bible confirms that everything was created through words, and thoughts occur within your mind. And so when everything was spoken into existence, everything could be connected to this thought idea within the mind of God. Could it be that at the root of all physical things dwells the energy of the Word of God that vibrates to generate the physical reality that we interact with, including ourselves? And so all physical objects could be connected to this energy at the molecular level. And this energy could be connected to the mind of God. And so everything that we see in the physical is actually verifying the consciousness of what most would consider God. And so when God spoke earth into existence, most physical objects that we interact with on this earth is literally from the earth. So everything is tied back to the origin of the earth. Even mankind was said to be created from the dust and other elements of the earth. So all things can be traced back to this vibrational energy of words, and words can be traced back to the mind of God. And so in other words, life exists, therefore God exists, is the only logical conclusion. And what we think of ourselves as individuals, everything that exists dwells within this one consciousness. We all could be living in the mind of God. God could be all that exists. This moment could all be one thing. And everything that we know could be tied in to this moment, which we would consider God. And so with this understanding, the term universe begins to make much more sense, because universe means one verse, which goes back to everything being at the origin, thoughts and words from the mind of God. There's also a chance there could be multiple moments all happening simultaneously, all at the same time, but that would be a deeper discussion that we can get into at a later time. But everything could all still be traced back to one origin moment, which we could consider a God moment. And so life on earth would be kind of like a lucid dream of God. And so when you dream, and if in that dream you are interacting with many others, that could be close to what this place that we call earth could be. Because even in the Bible it says that God spoke everything into reality. Because in Colossians 1:16 it says, "For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible. All things were created by him and for him." And so at the deepest roots of everything in what we assume to be physical objects, and everyone we would assume are other individuals, everything that we interact with could possibly lead back to this one supreme energy that we could consider the living word of God. We could be living in a literal never-ending story of God, or something similar to an eternal dream of God. Even Albert Einstein admitted that matter is related to energy. And so life in this earth continues as an eternal stream of energy in this infinite moment of now, independent of your individual consciousness. And so this place that we call earth, I could visualize similar to a river of life. And everything is connected to this river of life. And so, for example, you could see it like in your body, you have many cells. And if these cells are not aware that you even exist, and they go through several life cycles within your body, and these cells are never even aware that they are part of you. Another example would be like leaves on a branch, where you can see how the leaves, you could say, all have an individual presence, but each leaf is attached to the tree. And so all of these leaves make up the tree. And so everything is part of the tree. And when you take a step back, you can see the entire tree instead of just the leaf on the tree. And my third example would be kind of like life could be something like drops of water, where every drop of water ends up back in the one ocean eventually. The life cycle of a drop of water could end up in a cloud form. It could end up raining down on people, being used for growing food. The water could be used for drinking and all types of stuff. And then we can't forget that humans are also made out of mostly water. And so that water eventually finds its way back to the main ocean. And also the air that we breathe is similar to water. And so water is everywhere. And I'm going to actually get into a deeper discussion about air and what air actually is in another video. So please chip in on my Patreon page to help me get that video out. And another thing I would like to add about water is that water is one of the main ingredients of life. And so water is one of the most important elements of this earth, along with air. Without air and water, you could pretty much say that life would not exist. And so this could all be a clue as to what actually is air and water. Because in the movie The Matrix, they say the matrix is all around you. And so with air being a substance that is invisible and water is a liquid form of invisible, you can almost consider if air and water is more closely connected to God than anything else on this earth. Babies take their first breath of air for them to be alive. And then that soul must continue to breathe air every second of their life. And then everybody must drink water throughout their entire life. And so water definitely appears to be somehow connected to this discussion where we discussed earlier, where the elements of air and water is closely related to the concept of invisibleness. And the concept of invisibleness relates to the origin of self-aware consciousness. And this origin of self-aware consciousness relates to what we would consider God. And so check out my playlist, Water is Not What You Were Told, where I go into much more detail about the mysteries of water. And one last thing I must add about water is that there's been studies on water where scientists have observed water reacting to the energies that are projected through sounds and emotions and stuff like that. And there's also information coming out that water might hold some type of eternal memory. So we're going to dig more into that in another video. And so to conclude this video, it definitely seems like it's very possible that everything is somehow closely linked to God. Everything could definitely be contained within the mind of God, or everything that we see could be the consciousness of God. And so for everyone who is looking for proof of God, there's really evidence of God just by everything existing. Just by you being conscious is proof of God. And so we all could pretty much be ideas of God, living ideas, lucid dreaming ideas. And yes, I believe we are full of free will. I believe that we are also creating our world, our now, right now. Every choice you make and every decision you make is probably going to be accounted for in the end by the Almighty creator of this place. The one who created this place, I believe, is probably independent of this place as well. Like his supreme consciousness is not limited to just being everything through people. I believe, like we said earlier, he would have had to be self-aware consciousness. And the Bible tells you how God literally spoke everything into existence one by one. And so God would have been well aware of what he was creating when he created Earth. And this place called Earth seems to be some type of life-generating incubator where life is constantly being produced here. And like I said earlier, though, if we are being formed here and born here through the constant creation of life and new life as it continues, then our journey here has just begun, because after this life, that means, like I said earlier, your subconscious and who you are on the inside would most likely be reporting back to the source of life, which is the ultimate supreme consciousness of life, which would be the consciousness of all things. And if we are connected to that, because really if time doesn't exist and this place that we call earth is all within the mind of God, then he could definitely have a life of eternity planned for us. So that's why the Christian Bible is so important, because the Christian Bible warns you that there is consequences for your decisions and your behavior while you're here on earth. Because Matthew 10 verse 28 says, "And do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both the soul and the body in Sheol." And so the only one who can destroy both your body and your soul is who you are on the inside of you. Because if you die here on earth, your soul is not dead. Your soul is forever. But the one who can kill your soul as well is the one who created you, which is the creator of all things. And he doesn't have to allow just anything to fly in the future. That's why human life has been limited to roughly 120 years maximum for any human being. So your human life here on earth is to be judged after this place. And then according to your decisions that you made while you were given this physical life, it is up to the Almighty One who created you to decide if you move forward and pass go and move on to your next experience of life. And if you don't pass go, it is said that there is a lake of fire awaiting for the sinners of this earth that do not qualify to move forward after this physical place that we call life on earth. Check out my playlist, Proof Religion is Not What You Were Told. For much more information, I'll leave the link in the comment section and the description box. Simply enter your email address at feedyourmind1.com. That way I can send you some cool news briefs throughout the week. It's completely free. I try to put out a new video every 10 patrons, so help me release new videos by becoming a patron. You can sign up for as little as $1. The link's in the comment section and the description box. Help this channel become listener supporter so I can continue releasing epic videos for you. And you get early releases and much more. Thank you for your support. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe, and click your notification bell. This has been another episode of Feed Your Mind. Thank you for tuning in. Signing off.